So with that said, for those of you who are joining us or have rejoined us, I'd like to again welcome you to today's AccuZip Customer Partner Continuing Education webinar series. Today's webinar is on the AccuZip 6 Advanced. It is part 1. We're going to have multiple series of these webinars, and today's webinar is on the power of commands. The continuing education program, the mission statement of the program is the goal of the AccuZip Customer Partner Continuing Education webinar series is to drive customer partner success by providing software and industry support-driven education and best practice expertise. We're excited about this program. We've been continuing several different e-zips, e-newsletters, the zip line, all in our efforts to continue the education of our customer partners. We really want to be your go-to resource when it comes to everything mailing, data quality, postal software, to educate you on our existing products and services, new products and services, and with today's webinar in particular, features of a product and service that you're already using that you may not know about, and that may be the command feature. To cover some of the webinar basics, these are just the logistics, the behind the scenes, to make sure that the webinar goes smoothly, barring any technical difficulties. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you're speaking, the presenters cannot hear you. The Q&As, there is a chat box in your GoToMeeting panel. Chats will be answered at the end of the webinar if time allows. This is a very comprehensive webinar, so we do expect it to go the full hour. If you have additional questions that are not able to be answered in the Q&A chat box, please email those after the webinar. Send an email to support@accuzip.com. Please ensure that the subject line says AccuZip 6 webinar question. This will ensure that it gets filtered to the proper support technician and resource to answer this question. We will be compiling a one-sheet of all the Q&As after the webinar that we will be posting to our accuzip.com/webinars webpage, which is also the same location where you will find the recording. In the beginning of the webinar, we'll have a few interactive polls that you'll be asked to vote on, just so we can kind of get a feel for our audience and who Matthew is presenting to today. And speaking of Matthew, our next slide is about today's presenter. So today's presenter is Matthew Little. Matt is a customer care specialist at AccuZip. Many of you on the line have probably spoken to Matthew before when calling in or chatted with technical support. He joined the AccuZip team in 2015, and he has rapidly excelled in his skill level and expertise as an AccuZip technician. Matt holds 2 ID Alliance certifications. He is a MailPro Advanced and MailPro Fundamentals certified technician. He was also the first in the nation to obtain both of these certifications. I believe there's over 400 now in the nation, and Matt was the first on both of those levels. We're very proud of that here at AccuZip. Matt is also certified as a Mailpiece Design Consultant and a Mailpiece Design Professional by the Mail Systems Management Association. So Matt is extremely well-versed, well-educated in the industry, in mailing, and as you will see today, in the AccuZip software and command feature in particular. Okay, before I hand over the presentation to Matt, we're going to go ahead and do a poll just to see again what type of audience that we are catering this to. So Matt, if you want to go ahead and launch the first poll. Okay, so all of you should see this on your screen, and you can go ahead and start voting. The question is, how many years have you been using AccuZip? If you're a brand new user, between 0 and 1 year, between 1 and 5 years, 5 and 10, or 10 plus years. All of our webinars are geared towards all skill levels of AccuZip users. So whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned, it'll be our 25th year anniversary next year, so some of you have probably been with us for 25 years, but you're sure to learn something about the product. I like to say I've been here for almost 16 years, and every day that I use AccuZip, I learn something new that it does. Okay, it looks like, wow, almost 100% of you have voted. So Matt, go ahead and close this poll and we'll share the results with our audience. Okay, so it looks like we have, great, we've got quite a diverse crowd. We have 22% of you are brand new users, 42% are between 1 and 5, and 22% 5 and 10, and we do have some 10+ year users. So that's great. You're going to get a comprehensive overview. If you've never used commands, this webinar will literally change the way that you've used AccuZip forever. If you're an experienced user, I'm very happy to see you on this webinar as well. Matt's going to provide you with some great resources to go to build some more complex commands, some of that heavier syntax. So it's a great webinar that'll cover this entire spectrum of an audience. So with that said, Matt, go ahead and close this poll, and I'm going to go ahead and hand the presentation rights over to you and let you take it from here. So Matt, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We've got quite a bit to cover, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the presentation. So the kind of overview of this webinar that we have for you today. First, we're going to go over the purpose of the command feature. Basically, what exactly do you expect out of the command feature, and what are you going to use it for? Next, we're going to go over to how to create new commands for those of you that have never run a command in AccuZip before, and so we'll go over that step. And then we can also run multiple commands. So you can actually take multiple commands you have and set them up all to run at the same time, so you don't have to switch between commands, remember what order to run them in. You just line them all up, run them all at the same time. Then we're going to go into getting those resources for the commands that you need. These will be commands that we have on our website, or some syntax for commands you can find on some other resource sites that are going to help you build these commands in AccuZip. And then we're going to show you where to see commonly used commands for the past 25 years. These are commands that have been written for our customers that they've used, ones that we found that the majority of people use and are very useful in AccuZip. And then finally, we're going to go over creating your custom commands. So actually what this command syntax means, how to create those custom ones for you. So the very first thing is purpose of commands. Now the purpose of the command window in AccuZip is going to be for use when there is not a feature available in AccuZip to do what you want with the data in your list. For instance, you may want to add a sequence number to list, or create an output field that contains certain information about records to create your own key for searching. There are many powerful uses for the command window, and to use this you don't have to be a programmer. Even I myself don't come from a programming background, so some of the things that you may be hearing in this webinar, the terms that we're using, they may not be specifically correct for any programmers out there listening, may not be technically correct, but for the scope of using commands in AccuZip, you really don't have to have any programming background. So we do offer resources to help you build these command statements, including any of our technical support options, our live chat. You can call in, we can help you with commands, and also our support@accuzip.com email address. It is possible also to purchase a reference book if you'd like, or use any online resources, which we'll go over later as well. If you desire to learn more about the command statements or get any clarity, you can of course always come to us for those questions as well. And we do have those commonly used commands on our website and on our forum that can be copied and pasted directly into your command window. Now the commands in AccuZip are actually stored in the AccuZip 6 5.0 commands folder. And these are just simple text files. There's nothing special about these command documents. They can be transferred to another computer. We can email you commands, you can place them in that folder, or you can create new commands and just copy and paste the text right into the command window in AccuZip. So they're very easy to run and transfer from machine to machine. So now we're going to go ahead and actually start our second polling question, and that is how many of you have used, how many of you use or have used the AccuZip command feature before? So you should be seeing that poll now. Go ahead and vote. So hopefully, no matter what you've done, if you've used the command feature for quite a few years or just started using it or have never touched it, hopefully there will be some useful information for everyone viewing this webinar. Okay, perfect. Looks like we've got about just everyone voted now, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And it looks like actually we're almost right down the middle on people who have used commands before and how many of you have not used commands. So 49% have, 51% have not used commands before. So everyone here should get something out of this webinar. And so we'll continue on here. So how to create a new command. This is if you have never created a command in AccuZip before. And the first thing, one of the things that I always ensure to do is back up your data before you run a command. As soon as a command has been run in AccuZip, there is no undo option. So if you copy and paste something incorrectly, run the wrong command on the wrong list, anything like that, any mix-ups that occur, there is no undo option. So the easiest thing to do is just use file backup. That creates a zip file of your database backed up in that same directory there. So in order to create a new command, from the Edit menu in AccuZip, you can go to Edit, Command, or you can also click the command icon on the toolbar at the top. That's a little icon of the folder with a wrench and a hammer. And this is the command window that is going to appear. If you have no commands saved yet, it will look just like this window. So to create a new command, you just click in the Save As text box. You can write the name of the command, and you can press Tab or click down in the command statement syntax area. That's where the actual code or the syntax of the command is going to be placed. Here you can either type it in, or using Control-V or Edit Paste, you can paste text that you've copied from other sources. Just as a note, right-clicking and pasting into this window doesn't work. That's why we use the Control-V or Edit Paste, the Edit Paste menu option. And then once the command is in this window, all you have to do is click Run. That will run the command that you have in the command statement syntax area. As a note, if you have used the command feature before, you'll be able to select any saved commands that have been run previously from that command statements menu at the very top. In order to create a new command, you'll click on the Create New Command button, which is the little sheet of paper icon there. That'll empty out the Save As box. You can type a name and proceed as normal from there. Now we're going to move on to running multiple commands. So as soon as you have a few commands amassed in AccuZip, you can actually set up multiple commands to run all at the same time without having to choose multiple commands. So you'll get to the command window using the same Edit Commands or the command icon from the toolbar, and up at the very top you'll click on the Run Multiple Commands tab on the right-hand side. So for example, let's say you're a periodical mailer and you want to fill this subscribe underscore field with a T or an S based on the subscription data that you have in a different field, and then fill a 1 into the copies field, and finally add a sequence number to the list, all with the same command. You won't have to choose 3 different commands and run each one of those. You can just save them all to a command statement set and then run that single set. So in the command window, once you click on this Run Multiple Commands, you can see the commands that you have saved on the left-hand side under Command Statements. From here, all you have to do is either double-click on them or select them and use the arrow keys in the middle to add individual commands to that command statements to run. And for the name of this statement, that's going to be put on the Save Command Set as text box in the upper left-hand corner. As soon as you click Run, that's going to save that set, and you'll actually be able to select it from the Saved Command Sets menu on the upper right-hand side for future use. Okay, and now for those resources for getting commands that you can run in AccuZip. The first one is going to be our website, our AccuZip website. There's a support section on our website that has commands that have been used for the past 25 years. We've written and we have on our website. And just to kind of show you that real quick, pull over here, you can see the command source section of our website. That's going to be found by just clicking on the commands button right at the top of our website there. Next, we're going to have the actual Microsoft Visual Fox Pro language reference, and this is going to be the actual Microsoft documentation for Visual Fox Pro. And if you go to their website, you can see here the actual language reference tool, and there's a link provided here. Sorry, there's that. Don't get out of order here. So there's a link to that website, and the two main sections on this website that are going to be useful when finding commands in AccuZip or for AccuZip are the functions and commands section. So from this website, here's what it looks like. We have our sections over here. There's a command section and a function section. If we just click on our function section, you can see that there's quite a few different functions. We're going to go over the most useful ones in AccuZip, so don't worry about having to go to this website. We're, of course, going to explain a lot of these in detail, but if you ever need more information, want to clarify anything, this website is an awesome resource for looking up commands and functions. So back to that topic of commonly used commands. Here you can see again some commonly used commands, and I've actually got a couple examples for you here. So here's the add leading zeros to zip command that we have on our website. So you can see the command right there. I've copied and pasted the code from that command straight into my command statement syntax area of my command window, and I've saved this command as add leading zeros to zip. And down at the bottom you can see an example of exactly what the database looks like before and after this command has been run. So this command is useful for those East Coast addresses in which the zip code can sometimes lose that leading zero. This command is going to add that back. And then one more example we have for you here. This command is set up to insert a comma between last and first name in a field. So if a customer gives you a list and the name is in one field but the order is last and then first with no comma in between, this command can add that comma from there. You can see it'll read in the proper format for last comma first. All right, so now we're going to go over creating these commands. Now we know where to get some resources for some pre-built commands that you can run in AccuZip, and those are perfect if you want to run those, and then you know how to save them. But what happens if you want to actually create a command to do something custom in your list that we don't have a pre-written command for? So the first thing that we're going to go over is functions. And what exactly are functions? So functions perform a specific task using provided parameters and return the result of this task. So a task is basically just a set of instructions. We provide information, and these are in the form of parameters. Parameters in AccuZip could be fields, they can be numeric values, character strings, and even other functions. Now, numeric values and character strings, what these are is computers view strings and actual values differently. So a character string is going to be basically anything within a character field. So you can still have numbers in a character field, but the computer isn't viewing those as numeric values. It's just a number in a character string. We'll go over that a little bit more in depth, but for those of you that aren't used to hearing those terms, that is basically what we're referring to by those two different things. Now, the basic syntax of a function is going to be function name, open parenthesis, parameters, or parameters, and then close parenthesis. So for example, the allTrim function, we'll go over that later, don't worry about that now, but there you can see we've got the function name, we have an open parenthesis, and currently the field that this command or this function is running on is the first field. So function name, open parenthesis, and we have the parameter, first field, and a close parenthesis. Make sure that any function that you write has both an opening and a closing parenthesis in order to run properly, or else you will get an error when you try and run your command. For spaces and casing, these do not matter when you are writing functions. You'll notice that everyone writes functions differently. People usually have a certain spacing that they like for their functions, or a certain casing, either the function name all in capitals and the parameters in lowercase, whatever it may be. It's really up to you, because this does not matter. So it's whatever is personal preference when you're running your commands. And the order in which a function is going to be run, or the order of operations, is from the innermost function to the outermost function. So in the example below, we have len allTrim address. Now the allTrim function is the one inside. That function is going to be processed first, and then the len function is going to be processed. So just as in your regular mathematic order of operations, the innermost function processes first, and it moves outward from there. So now some common functions that can be used in AccuZip. The very first one we have is the allTrim function, and this can be written as allT or allTrim. Either way, they both function identically, and what this does is it trims leading and trailing spaces from a character string. Now there's that character string again, so these are going to be in character fields in AccuZip. So every field in AccuZip and every field in a database has a type. If the type of field is a character field, that contains a character string. And within that field, the value in that field, or the string in that field, is actually padded with spaces all the way out to the maximum field length. So anytime, and a reason you'll see this allTrim function a lot is because anytime that we're calling upon a field with a character string in it, almost always we're going to want to trim all of those trailing spaces, or else you end up with the first field that has a name and then up to 55 spaces after it, and we usually want to get rid of those. Another one is reduce. What this command, or what this function is going to do, is it'll trim the leading and trailing spaces, but it also removes duplicate internal spaces between words in that character string. So this is really useful when you're combining multiple character strings or fields together, and that middle field may be blank. So if you're combining the first, middle, and last field, and sometimes middle is blank, you might end up with a duplicate space in between first and last. But by issuing this reduce function on the entire expression, we can actually trim out those duplicate internal spaces. The next one we have is going to be our string tran, which is string transform. This is very similar to a find and replace search. So the parameters that we're going to be giving our string tran function is, first we're going to be giving it a field. What field should we be searching for in this function? The next is searched. What exactly do we want to find in that field? And then finally is replacement. And a little note here, you see these square brackets around replacement. This means that replacement is optional. So anything further that we're going to be showing you, anything within a bracket is actually optional for the functioning of this function. If you completely leave out replacement, it's just going to return or replace the searched value with an empty string. And as you can see there, the brackets are also around that comma. So if you were going to leave it out, you wouldn't add a comma after your searched value, you would leave that comma completely out as well. It would just be field, comma, searched, and that would be the entire function. And then we have substring. So string tran was like a find and replace. We found a certain character or a certain expression character string within a field, and we replaced it with something. What substring is doing is it is searching for a certain position in a character string and returning everything after that specific searched expression. So the parameters that we're going to provide for this are a field. We're usually going to have a particular field that a function is working on. Then we're going to have a start position, which is going to be an actual numeric value. So in the tip at the bottom of your window, you can see any parameter with a number sign should be a numeric value. This can be a function that returns a numeric value or a number not enclosed in quotes, which is viewed as a value and not a character string. So if we had 4 enclosed in quotes, it would be viewed as a character string. A 4 not enclosed in quotes is a numeric value. And you'll see this in examples that we have, so don't worry if it's a little confusing right now. We'll go over exactly how we can search for things, and there will be examples of all these functions. With the substring, it's basically just returning a portion of a character string, and we can include a start position where exactly in that string we want to start, and then the number of characters from there that we want to return. If you omit the number of characters to return, it'll return from the start position to the very end of your field. Next we have stuff. So stuff is going to insert a replacement value into a field at a certain position. So again, we give it a field, we give it the position that we want to start at, then we give it the characters replaced, how many characters in this string do we want to replace, and what we want to replace it with. Now with characters replaced, maybe you just want to insert something into a field, but you don't really want to replace any of the existing characters with your replacement. What you can do in that case is just put a 0 in characters replaced. That's basically saying just insert something into this specific field at this location without replacing anything. Next we have space. Now space is a pretty simple function, and all you're going to give as a parameter is a number, and that number is going to be the number of spaces. So when you're writing commands, if you're trying to provide a particular number of spaces in a certain section, rather than actually typing them out and then all you have is quotes with a bunch of spaces in between them, which is kind of hard to read, you can just use space and then a number as a function, and that is going to print just that number of spaces in a particular section. Okay, next we have empty. So what empty is going to do is a parameter you provide is, again, a field, and it's going to determine if that given field is empty or not. And what this is going to return is actually a true or false value. So rather than returning another character string, this is just going to return true, that field is empty, or false, that field is not empty. And we'll show you examples of where this can be used later on as well. The next one is going to be if. Now, if, like empty, has an evaluation. The very first parameter what we provide is an evaluation of something. So if could actually be used as an evaluation because we need something there which is going to return a true or false value. So we could have if empty first as our very first parameter, and that's going to evaluate if first is really empty. Okay, now we're going to do the true event, and that's our second parameter. The true event is what's going to happen if that evaluation we give in the first parameter is true. And then false event comes right after our true event, and that's what's going to happen if our evaluation is false. Now this function, for those of you who are well-versed in Visual Fox Pro commands, is an inline if function. It's not to be confused with an if and if command, which is a multi-line command. This inline if function is used in AccuZip primarily because AccuZip, when we're running commands, all the commands are run in line. There's no multiple line commands that can be run. So if you are versed in Visual Fox Pro programming, be sure not to confuse those two types of commands. Next, we have len, and this is going to be the length, and this returns a numeric value of the number of characters in a field. Whenever you are using len, make sure to trim the field. Use our all-trim function on this particular field within this len function, because spaces would be counted if we didn't trim our field first. Then we have pad r, which is our pad right function. What this function is going to do is it's going to take a field and it's basically going to pad it to a resulting size with a particular character. So we have our field as our first parameter, what we want the resulting size of the complete field to be, and then we have a pad character. Now if pad character, you can see there, can be omitted, spaces will be used as the pad character instead. So this is useful when we basically want to pad our fields out to a set width, and we want everything in a particular field to be the same length. Pad L can be used with the exact same parameters, but it's going to pad the left side of a character string. So pad right, pad R is the right side of the character string, pad L is the left side of that string. Now we have left. Left is going to function similarly to our substring function. It's going to return a specific number of characters from a field, and as the name would imply, those are going to be the leftmost characters in that field. So if we provide a field and then number of characters, say 10, it's just going to bring us a character string that is the 10 leftmost characters in that field. Right can be used instead of left with the exact same parameters as well, but that returns the rightmost characters of that character string. Then we have at. At is also going to return a numeric value, and in this one you can see it's a little bit different because the first thing we're searching for actually isn't a field. We're going to provide our searched string, so it's going to be searched within the field that we provide, the field being the second parameter, and it's going to return the numeric starting position of the searched string within that field. You can also add an occurrence parameter, and that's going to specify which occurrence of the search string you wish to find. So if you have a character string that occurs multiple times within a field, you can choose exactly which occurrence you wish to find. Now the at function is case sensitive. However, you can just use at C to perform a case insensitive search using the exact same parameters as the at function. Same thing with R at. Right at is basically that function, so it's going to search for the rightmost occurrence of that searched expression rather than searching from the leftmost occurrence. So one of the things that I referred to was the difference between a character string and a numeric value. So in order to find this in AccuZip, you can use edit fields, and that's going to list your fields and the type of field that is. So there's a couple, I'm going to go ahead and show both of these. We have these two conversion functions. So str is string, and that's going to convert a numeric value into a character string. So if you have a field in AccuZip that is a numeric type field, if you wish to convert that to a character string so that you can put it in a character field or use it as a character string within another function, you need to make sure to convert that using the string function first. And then the opposite is true of val. Val for value is going to take a character string and it's going to find the value, numeric value, of that character string. So if you have a number, but that number is in a character field and you want to do any form of arithmetic with that number or use it as a number in a function, you need to convert it to a numeric value using that val function first. So next we have commands. Now commands, unlike functions, those are the actual instructions which are executed within AccuZip. They're responsible for the actual changes that are going to be made to your database. So we use functions in conjunction with commands, and they're responsible for telling us exactly what to do with our function. So as an example here, we have a replace all command, which some of you may be familiar with, but we say replace all company with, and then we have our function. So our function is used within this command, and it's telling us exactly what are we replacing the company field with. And the string transform function that we have is company, and we're taking LLC and replacing it with LLC in uppercase format. So similar to functions, the extra spaces and casing does not matter within a command. So you can have any sort of casing, any sort of extra spaces, even tab characters in between all the words in your command, and that is not going to matter to AccuZip. So here's some common commands that are going to be used in AccuZip. Here you see again, this one is by far the most common command that you're going to run, and that's the replace all command. And as you can see here, some of the things that we're going to be providing this replace all command is we're going to give it first a field. So we're going to say replace all field. What exact field do we want to replace? And then with expression. Now expression in most cases is going to be a function. An expression is really just saying, okay, what exactly do you want to replace this with? So expression can be any number of things. It can be static text. It can actually be a numeric value if the field that you're replacing it with is a numeric type field, or it can be a function. Now also we can see we can use one single replace all command to make multiple replacements within the database. So we can actually use a comma to separate different replace commands that we want. So we can say replace all field with expression and then a comma, field 2 with expression 2, comma, etc., etc. And we can keep compiling these replacements on top of each other. Then we have for, and of course this is in brackets too, such as field 2, so you can see there it is optional. We don't have to have it, but a for option can be added, and it will only execute this replace command when it's true. So this is another evaluation. It's looking for one of the functions or another logical evaluation that's going to return a true or false value, and the replace command is only going to run when that evaluation is true. Another one we have is alter table. Now alter table alias add column is what it's going to start off with. And then we're going to give it a field name. So we're going to give a name of this new field that we want to add to our database. And then we're going to give it a type and a width in parentheses. Now, for this alter table alias, as you can see in the example I have down there, alter table alias add column first, that's adding a column named first. The type is C, which actually stands for character. The two types that you're mainly going to be using are C and N, which stand for character and numeric type fields. There is a list of other types that can be used, and that's actually available from that Visual Fox Pro website. I'll pull it over here real quick so you can see. We have our alter table, and it's actually a SQL command. But here we have the basic syntax. You can see there's quite a few different options here, none of which are really used in the scope of AccuZip or in this command webinar. But you can see there's actually a whole table down here of different data types and the field type there that we can provide in this command. And there we see C for character and N for a numeric type field. And then we're going to just specify the width there in the parentheses, and you can see that is a numeric value, so we shouldn't enclose that numeric value in quotes, give just the number. And also, if you look at that command alias, is actually in the form of a function. alias, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. That's because alias truly is a function, and it is just returning the name of the current database that's open in AccuZip. So if you wanted to, you could actually change this to a static name instead. If you had multiple databases open in AccuZip at the same time, you wanted to perform this command on just one of those databases, you could actually put in just the static database name itself there instead of that alias function. So very similar, we have another alter table. This one is just using the drop column feature. So we say the same thing, alter table alias, but this time we want to drop a column. We don't want to add a column. So we just say drop column and then give a field name that we want to remove from that database. Next is the delete command. So this command is going to delete a record for, or flag a record for deletion when the expression is true. So expression here is actually an evaluation as well. It's going to evaluate a certain circumstance that you've written, and if that's true, that record in the database is going to be flagged for deletion. Next one we have is pack. This one's very simple, just permanently removes records flagged for deletion. You can also use the pack feature in AccuZip, but if you're running this in something like a scripted or automated environment, sometimes having that pack can be useful for use in a command. Next we have the index command. An index is actually going to sort the database on a particular expression. Now expression in this case could just be a field. It could, for expression, we just give a field name and it's going to index the table or sort the table on that specific field. So we have index on expression, which could be field or it could be a function. And then we have tag name. Now for this, as far as the use in AccuZip, this tag name really does not matter. It can be anything you want as long as it starts with a letter or an underscore and is 10 characters or less. So you'll see a lot of times in the commands that we have written that use index, we just use my tag as the tag name. All that's doing is actually naming the index in the actual index file associated with the database. So for our uses in AccuZip, that can actually be anything you want. No need to worry too much about the tag name there. And then we can choose ascending or descending. So after the expression, as you can see, this is optional as well. If you leave that blank, if you omit ascending and descending from this command, it'll automatically sort it in ascending order. So really the only time you would use this if you want to sort it in descending order, you'd add the word descending after the index at the very end of the index command there. Then we have zap. Like pack, this command is very simple, just zap, one word, and it wipes the database, removes all records from that current database. So this is useful if you want to actually take a database that has records in it, or for some reason during a command you need to take your database, completely wipe it, and re-import into it, or whatever you need to do there. This just completely removes all records from that database. Next we have some miscellaneous commands here. So the first one is actually just going to be an asterisk. So any text following an asterisk in a command is going to comment out the text that follows. So comments in programming are not viewed as code. They're just viewed as static text and completely ignored. So if you want to write yourself notes or instructions for how to use a command in AccuZip, you can type an asterisk and then anything you want after that asterisk. When the line begins with that character, any text that follows is commented out and not viewed as code. Then we have the double ampersand. This functions the same as the asterisk in that any text following is commented out, but it can be used on the same line as a command. So if you want to add a comment at the end of a command after that text, you can actually type out a command, use the double ampersand signs, and then write any text after that, and that text following will be ignored. Then we have the semicolon. This is a line continuation character. So if you insert this character into a command, you're basically telling AccuZip that this command continues on the next line. So if you have a command line that's just really long in AccuZip and really hard to read, you can insert a semicolon, hit enter, drop the rest of the command down to the next line, and this is really useful for easier readability. You can actually kind of compartmentalize the command into different lines so it's not all just a jumbled mess that's hard to read. Next is the quote characters. You've seen these, but any text that we actually provide in a command that is surrounded by quotes is treated as static text. So for example, if we use our replace all command, we say replace all first with quote last quote, and we run that command in AccuZip, last is going to be viewed as static text. This means literally that the first field is going to be replaced with the word last, not with the data in the last field. If we wanted to actually refer to the last field, we would remove those quotations. Okay, next is going to be operators. So operators are symbols which are used to perform specific mathematical, relational, or logical operations. So these are your plus sign, minus, equals. We have different operators which we will of course go over, but these are basically used to compare two pieces of information, perform arithmetic on numeric values, and reach decisions based on logical conditions. So a lot of these are going to be used in those evaluation expressions that you have and in your if statements, your for expressions, things like that. Be cautious of overloaded operators, and what this means is it's an operator that's the same, but it performs differently depending on the data type that it's used with. The main example of this is the plus sign. The plus sign can be used to combine multiple character strings together, and it performs calculations on numeric values. So it really just depends on exactly what data types you're using with that plus sign as far as how it's going to act. Here's a list of those operators. So the operators that are going to be used on character strings are there we go, that plus sign. This is for concatenation, used to join character strings together. In this example, we have altrim first, and then the plus sign, and there we have another character string. Because we have quotes there, whatever's between those quotes is viewed as a character string or static text, and that's a plus sign. We've removed all the spaces from first. We need to add a plus, or we need to add a space in between anything else we add, or else it's going to butt those characters right up next to each other. So we have altrim first plus a single space plus altrim last. So this is going to put altrim first and altrim last together as a single character string with a space in between them. Next we have comparison. So the dollar sign is going to be used as a comparison character in a character string. So basically we have a single character string, and it's going to seek that character string within whatever follows it. So that basically what this example is saying is Tom found in first? If Tom is found in first, that's going to return true. If it's not found in first, it's going to return false. Then we have our numeric operators, and these are basically just your standard numeric operators that you see: addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. Those are pretty simple. Then we have modulus, which is the percent sign. So when you use the percent sign on two numeric values, that's going to get you the remainder. So here we have 14 modulus 4, which basically means 14 remainder 4. So 4 times 3 is 12, the remainder is 2. 14 modulus 4 equals 2. Then we have exponentiation, which is either a double asterisk character or a caret sign. That's shift 6 on your keyboard. So that's going to be 3 to the second power. And then we can also group sub-expressions using our parentheses. So similar to mathematical order of operations, everything inside those parentheses is going to be processed first, and then it'll process the rest of that function. Now we have our logical operators. So these are going to be, the first one is going to be a logical negative. So this is not or an exclamation point. Basically, these operators are going to be used on things that return a true or false value or some sort of comparison that we're making. So here we can see in the example, the very first example we have is using that string comparison. So we have John and then the $ in first. So is John found in first? But what our logical operator with that exclamation point is going to do is it's going to invert that return. So if John is found in first, that would return true, but our logical negative actually switches that to a false. So is John not found in first is basically what that expression is saying. We can do the same thing just with the word not rather than the exclamation point. So not empty first. When is first not empty? That's true. If first is empty, or it'll be reversed. So if first is empty, it would actually return false. And then if first was empty, it would return true. Next, we have our logical and. So this is actually going to take two expressions, and if they are both true, then it's going to return true. So here we have len, which is our length, altrim zip is less than or equal to 5. So basically, as long as our zip field is 5 characters or under, and empty email. So if the length of the zip code is less than or equal to 5, and the email field is empty, this would return as true. If either of those were false, it would return the entire thing as false. Next we have or. So this is going to be similar to and, but in this situation, either of the expressions we're using can be true, and it'll return a true value. Then we have relational operators. Most of these are going to be used on numeric values as well. And as you can see, I've already used one in a couple of examples here, but we have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, which is just a single equal sign. And then we have not equal to, which can be written in a multiple of ways. We can use both the less than and greater than symbol. We can use the pound sign, and then we can use exclamation point equal sign, and that is not equals to. Then we have character string comparison. What this is going to be is it's going to be used the double equal sign character, and we've already gone over the character string comparison, which is the $. But what this string comparison is rather than is this found in, it's does this exactly match. So let's say our first field in this example, we're using altrim first. Let's say our first field actually had Jim Smith in it. Now, Jim Smith doesn't exactly equal Jim, so that is actually going to return false. If we were using string comparison and we were saying, is Jim found in first? Well, yes, it is found in part of first because we have Jim Smith in first. But using character string comparison, those fields have to match exactly, even down to the blank spaces. So here we go. Now we can finally put it all together and we can see what a couple commands that you can write are going to look like in AccuZip. And as you can see, actually in this command, the very first thing I've done is add a comment. I like to add comments to every command I'm doing. I can copy and paste them, move them wherever I want, and that comment is going to stick with them. So I don't have to reverse engineer my command or run it to see what it does. I've got it right there in the comment, and it's going to tell me exactly what is happening in this command. So the very first thing this command does is it adds a full name field. So we use our, as you can see at the bottom of the screen there, with our alter table syntax that we're going to be using, we have alter table alias add column full name. It's a character type field, so I use C, and the width I want is 75, just to make sure I can fit all the data in the first and last fields. The next line of my command that I have, we're going to drop it down a line because now we're writing an actual new command, is replace all full name with altrim first, so basically the first field minus any leading and trailing spaces, plus quote space quote, which is just a single quote, plus altrim last. the last field without any spaces as well. So there you can see the before and after effects. We have our first and last field, but after running the command, we have a full name field that's been added to the database. We've replaced that full name field with the trimmed first field, a space, and then the trimmed last field. So here's another situation, and what this command is going to remove duplicate company names from the care of field. So I've used this command in multiple situations, one of them being customers provided a list, and now they have the company name and they have a care of field that they want printed in some regards as well. But they have duplicated the company name into the care of field as well when it's blank. So if you were to actually print both the company and care of field in this situation, you'd end up with duplicate company names on some of those pieces. So basically, the first thing that we're going to look at when we're writing a command is what exactly do we want to happen. So what we want to happen is we want to remove the care of field when the company matches what's in care of. So that's the command that we've written at the top there. You can see replace all care of. We have the name of our care of field with, and then just double quotes. Now double quotes is just going to be an empty character string. So we're actually replacing it with nothing. We want to make sure to give something there, which is why we provide an empty character string. We can't just leave it blank, but this is the next best thing, replacing it with an empty character string. You could also use a space if you want a little easier readability within that command. And then we're going to use our for, which is going to evaluate something. So we're going to say for all trim company is found in all trim care of. So if we can take that company name, use our character string comparison, find that company name in the care of field, we're going to replace whatever's in care of field with an empty character string, replace it with nothing. And there you can see the results on the right-hand side. Whenever the company name and the care of field match, that information is removed from care of. Next we have, this one is going to be really useful if you are using the use mailer ID from field option in AccuZip. What the use mailer ID from field does is if you have a field in your database, you can specify a particular field name, and if it's populated, AccuZip is going to use the information in that field as the mailer ID within the piece barcodes. So let's say you have a script running and you want to add a particular mailer ID for that specific script. Well, using this command, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to add that column. So using our alter table command, we alter table alias, add column cust MID, and that's going to add a customer cust mail ID field, which is a character field, and it's nine characters in length. And we're going to replace all of that customer mailer ID field with just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I've enclosed that in quotes, so it's just replacing that field with static text. That's all that's going into that field. Here we have one, and this one's really just kind of using an example of how this index command can work in a couple different scenarios. So let's say we want to actually index our database on the company name, the length of the company name. Maybe we're short for space in a certain position and we want to actually see what the longest field is that we're going to have to print so we know what our layout is going to need to be like. So we're going to run this command. It's the index on command, and there's that syntax again at the bottom of the screen for you. So we're going to index on. We're going to give it an expression. And that expression in this case is going to be a function. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to use all trim company. That's going to take the company, trim any trailing or leading spaces from it, so we end up with just the characters in that company name, and then we're going to find the length of the company field without any spaces. And as tag, you can see I've used my tag because that name of the tag does not matter. It is necessary, but it doesn't matter. We're going to sort it in descending order. So we want the largest value on top going down to the smallest value at the bottom. And so there you can see what the result of this command is. And we've got the largest company name at the top going on down to the smallest company name at the bottom. Okay, so this one is a little bit more complicated command, but it is one that I have used as well. So let's say someone gives you a list and there are multiple names in that list, but each name is actually duplicated, or there's two names within the first field separated by and. So there you can see we've got Dale Cider and Betty Cider as our very first record, and you want to actually take that and split Betty Cider into a different name field if there's two names in first. So for that, what we're going to do in the example that I've written is we're going to use a substring function, because a substring function is going to get us a specific starting position and ending position of a character string. So basically what we want to do as we're thinking through how we want to write a command, we want to take everything that occurs after and move it to our second name field, our SEC name field, and then remove that second name from the first field. So the very first thing we're going to do in our command, and as you can see here too, I've used the semicolon. So this isn't actually a multi-line command. This is all one command, and if you were to look at it without these semicolons, it would all be on one line. So here's a good example of when we're going to want to use those line continuation characters, because this is much easier to read than just a single line of text spanning across your screen. So we have replace all sec name. So we're going to identify exactly what we want to replace that sec name field with. What we want to replace it with is a substring of first. But for this, we need to choose an actual starting location, because as you can see in the syntax at the bottom of your screen, we need a start position. So we give it a field. That's our first parameter. So we're looking at the first field. What does our start position need to be, though? For this, we're going to say, well, we need to be start at the and, or after the and within the first field. So in order to actually specify that position, we're going to use the at function, because we want to find the numeric position of the and string in our first field. So there you can see as the second parameter, we actually have an at function. An at, we're going to provide first what do we want to find with our at function, and I've used space and space because we don't want to find and if it occurs in someone's name. We want to find it when it's its own word, which is why we've added a space before and after our and string in our at function. Next, in our at function, we need to provide a field that we're searching in, and we're still searching in the first field. So our at function is saying, I want to find the position of and within my first field. Now, as you can see, right after the at function there, I also have +5. So taking into consideration this first record here, we have Dale Cider and Betty Cider. If I was just to use at and the space and space in first as my substring, what would happen is that AccuZip would return in this scenario the very starting position of space and space. So for Dale Cider, his first name is 4 characters, then there's a space, and then 5 characters for his last name. So the starting position of and in this exact record is 11. It's starting at the 11th position of the first field. Now, if I actually moved everything from the 11th position and over into the sec name field, it would include and before Betty's name. But I don't want to include and. I want to get rid of and just include Betty. So basically, I'm using +5 as my way to say exclude the 5 characters that come after that specific position, which is and. We're basically just going to add the length of our searched expression of the at function. And that's going to return just Betty Cider. As you can see too, so that's the end of that substring function. I've only given 2 parameters. I've only given a single field and then an at function, I don't need a specific number of characters returned. I want to return everything after that specific position to the end of the field. But as you can see, just after the closing parenthesis on that substring function, there's actually a comma and then a line continuation character. So what I'm doing is I'm performing multiple replaces within this single command. So I'm replacing all secname with then my substring function, which is going to return just the character string after and then a comma, and another replacement. So then I also want to replace first with, and then I'm going to use a left function because I only want to replace my first field with a particular amount of the leftmost characters. In this case, it's going to be Dale Cider. And as you can see, using that left function, the first thing we provide is a field. So we're looking at our first field as well. Second parameter that we provide is another at function. This time I'm using the exact same at function I did in my previous expression, but I'm not adding 5 to it. Because in this case, once I find space and space, I don't need to add anything to that position, because for this function it's going to return 11, in which case it's going to stop right at that space character. So this left function is only returning, as far as the first record goes, the 11 most characters in that field, which is exactly what I want. I just want Dale Cider. So after that left function, I have another line continuation character and then a for expression. So I only want this command to be run when the and word, when the word space and space is found in first. If there's anything else in that first field, or if and is not found, I don't want this command to be run. So there right beneath it, you can see the result of this command that we've run. It's taken the first name, the name before the and, left it in first, and then taken everything after and moved it to our second name field. Okay, I think I got one more for you here. So what this command is going to do, just reading our comment there, is it's going to fill a mem level or a member level field with gold when donation is greater than 100 and silver if it's less. So in this example, I've been given a list, also been given a donation field, and they want me to determine the member level based on that donation that's been given. One of the first things to point out here is donation, when I've imported it, is actually a character field. Character is the main field type in AccuZip. Anytime you're importing a list and you check the use header option to use your own field names, the type of field that's created is always going to be a character field. So in this example, I just left my donation amount as a character field. So for the command that I've written, I need to take the member level field and I need to populate it with silver and gold based on the value that's found in donation. So the very first thing I had is replace all mem level, specifying which field we want this replacement to occur in, with, and then I have an inline if function. So I want to evaluate something, and depending on what that evaluation returns, true or false, I want to populate that field with gold or silver. So here I'm taking the value of the donation field. Again, the donation field is character, so I want to find the numeric value of it in order to use it with the greater than or equal to function. In order to use that comparison, it needs to be a numeric value. So we have val donation is greater than or equal to 100, and then our next parameter is, okay, what's going to happen when that's true? So that's our true event. So gold is going to be what happens when the value of donation is greater than 100. After that, our final parameter is silver. So if it's not greater than 100, silver is what's returned by this if function, and that's what the mem level field is going to be replaced with. And then at the very end, I have for not empty donation. So this command is only going to run when the donation field is not empty. So if the donation amount, as you can see in the example there, is blank, I don't want to replace the mem level with anything. Who knows if this is going to be completely dependent on the situation, but in this situation, I didn't want to give any member level if there wasn't a donation amount attached with it. Okay, so some final tips and tricks for you. These are a couple commands that can be used. Some of these are for more advanced users, those of you who use commands and might write commands on your own. This set safety off. So issuing this command prior to commands that permanently remove records or alter files will suppress the warning prompt. So if you have, let's say you've issued the pack or the zap command, when you actually go to run that command, AccuZip is going to prompt you, are you sure you wish to remove these records from the database? If you're using the command in a scripted process and you don't want to see that warning message, the very first line of that command can be set safety off. And that will disable any of those warning messages from occurring. Next, we have this on-air command. So if you say on-air com_message equals message, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, that's going to suppress any error messages that would occur from the following commands lines. And the reason that this is typically used, or the most reason that I see that is typically used, is if you're adding a field to the database, but that field might already exist. So if you have a database and you want to use the alter table command on it, but there are certain situations where the field you're trying to add exists and the field you're trying to add doesn't exist, if you use this on-air command as your first command, when it gets to that line of the command, if that field already exists, it would normally throw an error message saying that the field being inserted already exists. You can't add this field, it's already there. So we want to suppress that. We don't want to see that line. We just want the command to continue on without interruption. Another thing that people have asked before is, how do I run a command only on the current selection of records? So I want to show undeliverable, and I just want the command that I'm going to run on that current selection of records that I've made. You can use the &, ampersand, X filter as the evaluation. So for example, we have replace all field with expression, which is just the syntax for the replace command for ampersand X filter. So it is only going to run that command on records that are in the current selection. You can also use the inline if function. As the very first evaluation, we have ampersand X filter. So true, it is in the selection, or false, it's not in the current selection. Another thing too, so if you wish to run compiled commands, so the commands, everything that I've shown you, all the examples, those are non-compiled commands. And don't worry about this. This is only if you're going to be performing more advanced functions, the multi-line functions. But in order to get these commands to run compiled, all you have to do is add a compiled folder to your AccuZip 6 5.0 commands folder. If there is a compiled folder in your commands folder, every command is going to run as a compiled command, and it will also create a .fxp and .prg file of the command in that new compiled folder. So if you want to run those actual multi-line if, end if, or the do for, do while, try catch, any of those commands that run over multiple lines, you would need to run this as your command as a compiled command. So that's it for my portion of the presentation. Thank you guys so much for coming out. And don't worry, we did record this. If you want to go back and watch it, it will be posted to our webinar web page if you ever want to download it and view it later, as well as it looks like we're out of time for any questions and answers, but we will be posting any of those questions you have to the webinar page as well. You can always email those to our support@AccuZip email address, and I will definitely get to those questions there. And there's also couple other helpful resources there, tutorial videos, the community forum, live chat, and our email and phone support for you there.
Okay, excellent job, Matt. I am going to, for those of you who are still here, I'm going to take one question that was in the chat before we wrap up here. So Matt, this question is going to be for you. Is the reduce, the open paren and close paren function, a custom AccuZip function?
No, the reduce is actually a Visual Fox Pro function. One of the reasons that reduce may not be used frequently in AccuZip is it's really when you issue reduce on an expression, so expressions that are exporting information from AccuZip, you can use functions within those expressions. When you issue a reduce function within an expression, it'll actually trim that field length itself down to the length of whatever that function is using. So if you have first, middle, last, and you use reduce on that entire expression, whatever the length of first, middle, last is after those fields have been reduced, it changes the field width down to that size. So any subsequent fields that are exported, if they're longer than that single field, they're actually truncated. And we actually have to use a pad function if we're going to issue reduce in an expression. So no, it's not a custom AccuZip function. You just don't see it too often because you need to be careful whenever you're issuing it, either in the label designer or in an expression on an export. Always pad. You issue pad, so it actually be pad right, and then you have your reduce function, and then as the final, I've included it, it's in the documentation, but pad right, give your reduce expression, and then a comma, and then a length that you want that field to be padded to. So if you're padding first, go 55 is the length of first there, and that'll make sure all the information is going to be given. When you issue it in a command, though, you don't have to do that. It's not going to actually change the field width, only when you're using it as an expression in the label designer and the export setup window.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to take actually one last question in chat. Before I do that, though, I'll leave it in closing. Like Matt had said, this session will be recorded. We can't thank you all enough for attending. So if you need to leave, you can go ahead and drop off now, or we'll take one or two more questions in chat. Please do check our webinars page for future webinars. Our next webinar that's coming up is on AccuZip scripting. It's also part of our advanced series, and that's going to be presented by Dave Belmonte, and he's one of our in-house resident scripting experts. But today's webinar, Matt, you did a phenomenal job, and the command feature, as you all saw, is something that's built within AccuZip. It's unique to AccuZip. It opens up the power and unlocks and unleashes the power of AccuZip, where there's several other programs you could probably eliminate or call external programs using the command feature. So I'm really happy with the turnout. So I wanted to wrap that up, but I am going to take at least one more chat question in here because you guys patiently waited with all of us. We're going to wait with you. So this question is from Bob. Is there any advantage to running multiple commands versus a multi-line command?
Really, the reason why you would group multiple commands together and run them at the same time is if you wanted each of those commands to remain compartmentalized. So true, you can actually take a command that's performing multiple functions, or take multiple commands, and copy the text out of them and put them all into one command and run it as one single command. Really, the use that you're going to get out of running multiple commands at the same time is if you don't have a need to have multiple commands in there that might be getting you confused. You end up with a command that does 20 different things, and it just kind of clogs up the command window there. That's when you can create a set. So really the only reason you'd want to create a set and run them at multiple times is if you have multiple commands that you don't want to combine into a single command and run it like that. But of course, it's going to be up to you at that point. So no, there's no real advantage to doing it that way other than you save yourself having to scroll through a couple hundred chats if, depending on what commands you end up having.
Okay, and I'm going to take one last one. And so this is from Dan. If I have a field called C002, so the carrier route field, and I wanted to select only records with a B in the field, would the correct command be quotation marks, COOT, quotation marks, space, $, space, B?
Yeah, sorry, let me look at that command real quick just so I can read the syntax. So
definitely, and Matt, I will give you that syntax here. Actually, if you look in the chat panel, you might be able to see it as well. Excellent. And B is the key code field.
Would be the correct. Yeah, so in that for that syntax, you'd actually switch it. So the B would be in front of the $, so you would have B in quotations, and then it would be $C002. So anytime that you're calling upon a field name with that string comparison, you are not going to enclose the field name in quotations. If I can actually type into this chat window here, your syntax would look like this. It would be quote, B quote, $, and then C002 would be your actual field name. Let me go ahead and send that there. So it would be quote, B quote, $, and then without any quotation marks, C002.
Awesome. Dan, so there you have your answer. So any other questions that you all have, please send an email, like we talked about in the beginning of the webinar, to support@AccuZip.com. Very important that in the subject line field you include AccuZip 6 webinar. And that'll be routed, and we'll compile a list of those. Those will be posted on the webinars page. So with that said, I don't have any more closing remarks unless you do, Matt, other than thank you all for your time. We know it was a time investment. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. We had a great attendance. Everybody stayed for the long haul too, so that's really appreciated. And be on the lookout for future webinars as well. And we'll be sending an email with a feedback survey. So if you have any feedback on the webinars, or you want to send that feedback directly to feedback@AccuZip.com, we want to provide resources to you that help you. So send us feedback, send us information, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see more of, see less of. We're here to listen, so we're here for you. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt. And I hope you all have a great rest of the week, and it's almost the weekend. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.